Chapter 27. I know what you're thinking, Grandpa said. Tree sniffed. It's hard to cry when you've got a wet mask over your face. I bet you're thinking this whole house will have to be torn down. Tree shrugged. He was, sort of. I can see why you'd think that. I've never built a house before. Grandpa studied the wall. See, floods leave clues. We can see how high the water went on the first floor. Everything above the water line is okay. The mirrors, the hanging lights. We've got a whole second floor in mint condition. Now, inside the wall... He put an arm on Tree's shoulder to steady himself and kicked a hole in the wall with his good foot. He stuck his hand in, pushed past insulation. We can see that the plumbing pipe still looks solid. I'll have to rewire where it got wet, but we haven't lost the farm. Not by a long shot. We haven't? Grandpa handed Tree a hammer. Ram that there. Tree hit the wall, made a hole. Rip it out. Tree did. Stick your hand in there until you feel the frame. Tree pushed through the insulation. I can feel it. Knock on it. Tree rapped strong. It was solid. We're going to lug this mess out of here, strip this sheetrock down to the frame, and build her back up again. Tree sighed. You make it sound so easy, Grandpa. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it. They stayed in a hotel that night, Bradley too. Tree was so tired and sore from cleaning up. Dad called Curtis and Larry at school. Both wanted to come home in the next few days to help. They sure could use the extra hands. Then Tree called Sophie's house and finally got an answer. He almost shouted for joy when he heard her voice. I tried to call you, Tree, for the last 3 days, but I couldn't get through. Aunt Peach got us a room at a motel. We were all shoved in there with cots and cats. It was torture. But the apartment's fine. The flood didn't touch us. I guess there's something good about a fourth-floor walk-up. He told her about Dad's house and how hard they were working. I'm sorry you lost out, but it's good you're not an average size, Tree. It's good your dad and Grandpa have a really big guy to help take care of business. Tree squared his shoulders at that one. 2 of Grandpa's friends brought an electric pump to drain water from the basement. Dad and Tree picked through the kitchen and garage, finding what could be saved. They worked like machines while they still had daylight, wearing big rubber gloves. Floodwater is infectious. Lugged trash to the dumpster in the driveway. Every house on Tree Street had one. Tree shoveled out piles of junk from the first floor into the dumpster, smiling bravely at other neighbors who were doing the same thing. Tree worked till he couldn't anymore. Then the momentousness took over. There was too much to do. How could they ever... The first rule of rebuilding is to find something positive and concentrate on that, Grandpa said. Tree looked at the flooded, smelly mess. I haven't thrown up yet. Grandpa laughed. That's a start. The basement water had been drained, leaving rank, thick sediment that covered the floor and walls. Sophie threw ruined books and sports equipment into garbage bags. She'd come to help Tree with the cleanup. Tree looked at the broken trophy case lying open on the muddy basement floor. Curtis's and Larry's sports certificates were all ruined. Some of the trophies were cracked. They'd seemed so important when he was growing up. Tree knelt down to touch a frame with smashed glass. He remembered his mother framing Curtis's award for basketball, remembered being in the high school auditorium when Curtis got it. Tree had applauded so hard his hands hurt. Tree picked up Larry's brass home run medal and Curtis's Athlete of the Year trophy, dripping mud. All that glory covered in sludge. Tree put them in a box. I'm going outside before I puke, Sophie announced, lugging a bag up the stairs. The trash king picked through the rubble of what was left in his junkyard. So much of it had been ruined by the flood. You look at this red wagon, he said to Tree, who'd come to help him move some of the heavy pieces. Why did it survive? It should have been sucked up by the wind, carried down by the river, but it's here. That tells me it can take the heat. I'm not going to sell it for peanuts. I want some real cash for a tough piece like this. He walked over piles of rusted metal, lifted an old weather vane from the heap, stuck it in the ground. The vane pointed north. Still working, he declared. After all we've been through, you can look at this yard of mine, think there's nothing left worth saving, but trash is here to remind us all that the old's not so bad. It's got life in it yet. He looked toward the sun, scratched his chin. I'm going to put that in the brochure. The giant oak tree began to bud 5 days after the flood. Birds were chirping in its branches. Not one limb was out of place. Benches were upended, lesser trees snapped in two. It makes you appreciate a serious root system. Roots planted so deep in the ground, holding steady against the storm. Tree stood in front of the tree with Sophie. Every day at Dad's they were making progress. A huge dehumidifier was in the basement now, drying things up. They'd ripped up the carpet, lugged it out to the street. I know this is a special park for you, Tree. I like nature, but too much of it makes me nervous. A tear rolled down Sophie's cheek. Tree bent down. What's wrong? I didn't tell you, 'cause you had so much going on, but Lassie, she didn't make it. Oh no. It happened at the motel. She was crawling so slow. Then she just froze on the branch. I tried to get her to do the dance, but she couldn't do it anymore. Big sniff. I told her, I know what it's like to not have anyone like you around. You feel like giving up sometimes. Tree took her hand. I told her that as a pet she'd been true. She didn't fetch or do tricks, but she gave back as much as a reptile can. She fell off the branch, hit the floor of the cage. Sophie lowered her head. I buried her in the dumpster in the parking lot. I said, thanks, girl, for everything. You could have been a dog if you had better luck. You were good to her, Tree said. You gave her a good life. Sophie nodded. God knows I tried. Tree looked across the park to the roof of Temple Beth Israel, where the sign was still welcoming people home. Just then, Nuts the squirrel showed up, nervous as anything. Hey, Nuts, you made it. Tree threw him a peanut. The squirrel grabbed it and studied Sophie. You know this squirrel? Kind of. Tree felt stupid. He looks like he's got a lot to deal with. Nuts shook a little, scampered off. So are you sleeping in the park or what, with your dad's house all messed up? Tree grinned. Actually, my mom's house made it through fine. She invited us to stay with her until Dad's house gets fixed. Sophie snorted. Your dad, too? Even Bradley. She said it was going to take a lot of work to get the house right, and that no one should have to sleep in a hotel, and that she and Dad were adults and could handle this. We're going there tonight. Sophie looked at the white oak. You've got a strange family, Tree. Tree didn't say it, but he thought this was a very good sign. Maybe his mother wanted to work things out with his father. He wondered if something awful like a flood could happen.